You dove pretty deep down into the rabbit hole as far as AUCs go, how they work, what makes them tick. Where do you want to take it? What do you see that needs to be addressed in this whole? I will even say like the manufacturing process of it. What do you think you can add to the game? What are you looking to add to it?
Well, I see several factors. So if I didn't bring any innovation at all, someone asked me today, it's like, what's the innovation you're bringing? I'm like, and I replied by saying, if I don't bring any, like no innovation whatsoever, and I come with a product that is developed and manufactured with a tested process behind it, that has a manufacturing line behind it, that has, a real quality control process that
Hmm.
that in and of itself is in demand right now, and it's
I agree.
totally unavailable. So mainly what I'm looking at is the foundation of it. Is from concept to what has to come after, there has to be a company in place that has a plan and a structure to get all the way
Right.
from the concept to the prototype, to the testing, to the production, and then through the marketing. It's a long process. So what happens in the existing manufacturing process is that the way they break it down over there is they take the problem and they separate it into all these little pieces and
Hmm.
they divide it up among their workforce. And
Right.
this works well for certain types of problems with limited risk. If you're dealing with something that like a CD player, that's a fine situation. That's a fine solution and a fine way to handle an engineering team. But the main issue is the lack of single vision and the lack of connection with the customer base. So
Hmm.
when your products are produced on the other side of the world by a group that prioritizes profit at pretty much the expense of all else, and you get a result that isn't great.
I see what you're
So
saying.
yeah, I mean, basically, what I wanted to see is something that's safer.
And you're
Personally,
talking something grassroots. You would like to see something here in the U.S. as well, right?
well, North American for sure. I've actually
Right.
investigated some production options in Mexico, um, as well as obviously the U.S. itself. But for example, some of the projects I'm working on, we're producing sheet metal parts here in the U.S., and
Hmm.
it's actually competitive with prices in China.
Nice.
So that's one of my thought processes that we could use an aluminum sheet metal kind of a body actually produced in the USA. Uh, that's one of the ideas that I'm looking into. The
Okay.
same supplier, they can also produce like polycarbonate plastic panels for me in different shapes. And so these things have fairly low cost of entry because of the production process and local base in the US. And that's something that I'm looking at. It's like I want to see something that is not just a one-off because it needs to be built with the production process in mind. It's like you need to consider like how exactly are we going to replicate this thing, from day one. Otherwise, it's a flawed process. We're going to have to go back and forth. It's never going to make it to the end goal, right? So if you looked at my actual plan, there are certain details, especially at the beginning, that make this make more sense. Like my initial plan is to use an off-the-shelf motor, something that will be, you know, I don't have to worry about the sub details of it. And this is an initial choice because deciding whether or not you're going to design a motor for a custom unicycle is a very significant cost and time factor. Custom motors take between minimum of 3 months, usually closer to like 6 or 9 by the time you're done with the process. And ironically, they take as long to develop and produce as the motor controller itself, even though the motor controller has 100 times more parts, or no, like maybe 60 times more parts in it than a motor does. Motors just are very precise machines, and to get mechanical things created in a new way into that precision is challenging. So I'll start with this. I start with standard motor. Some things are cost effective here. Other things I am developing a method to make them cost effective. Like with battery production, I'm working on this semi-automated battery welder. It's using BESC. So, but yes, I'm a BESC welder, and that's one factor of it is that you can parameterize these things to control a transformer, which can drive a really powerful electrical pulse into melting metal if I wanted to. And
Hmm.
so my idea is to be able to have a system that is partly automated and partly human. So there's some things that are just really difficult for a machine to do, picking up certain things and putting them in certain places. But there's other things that can do really well. Like it can weld pretty fast on its own.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to look into for, bringing pack production costs down, because I can buy battery cells here at the same price or lower than they can in China. They're already stocked in the US. I have a
I've seen
supplier.
that before too. You can. Someone's
I have a
talking about
supplier out
battery.
of LA. They've got, between 10 and 100,000 of pretty much every top cell on the market, and they always have it.
Yep.
And so I don't have to spend money on cell inventory. I can just buy them as the production needs them, and they're locally available. It takes a day to get them to Southern California, and essentially, yeah, like it's a lot of the cost of a unicycle is in logistics, it's in quality control failures, it's in the amount of extra parts they have to stock. Think about it. I'm not against working with other distributors, but they have to make it make sense for me. See,
Right.
the idea would be that if I have my own production line in the North Americas, then I can send the part from the production line. It doesn't need a distributor.
Right.
If there's a problem, it goes back to the production line. Like, the distributor becomes one thing, a product investor. See, when the production line is this local, the only purpose for a distributor is to invest in that product. They're going to buy that product and they're going to sell that product. They're going to make money doing that. And so if they're going to invest in the product, meaning they're going to actually purchase it from me, then they have to purchase a large enough amount for it to benefit my company enough for me to actually consider working with them, right? And so the way that I look at it is that I might work with some of the unicycle distributors. None of them have made me an offer at this moment. I mean, of course, I don't have a product to sell them, so I don't blame them.
Right.
But at the same point, it's like, we can look at it like the cost is for the circuit boards. Like, I would probably have those made in China, but I'd have them final assembly and quality controlled here. And so, like, the testing rig and the optical quality control and the bench testing and all the things that I can do for stuff like a circuit board that is most cost effectively produced in China, that's one option. The other side of it is that, like, I have a manufacturer in Mexico that can produce circuit boards. It just costs a premium, like around 30% more. And you're talking a circuit board that already costs a couple $100. That stacks up and the consumer notices it. So
Right.
I'm not, I'm looking at the Mexico option, but at the same time, it's just like, they're not as fast and they're not as well outfitted as China by a long shot.
Gotcha.
So I'm looking at three things. I'm looking at what production I will physically build in-house, like which tools are specific to my problems to build a unicycle. Like, the welder is a specific problem. I need to build some of the production line. I need to source some things in the United States, like the industries that are strongest here, like sheet metal, very strong industry. I can source that here and I can save compared to shipping it from China.
I get it. I mean, I get it from a business standpoint. And we're going to answer this question right here together, because I get what he's saying. We'll read right there. The unicycle project sounds very interesting and I agree with most of Austin's ideas. Wish him success. But to be honest, I'm kind of skeptical too. I'm not skeptical at all. Yeah, I mean, if you take from what I'm getting to, I'm going to throw my 2 cents in here, and then you come back over the top of it if it's not making sense of what I'm saying. I was watching an interview. I think it was either like Dateline or 2020. This is some years back. And the guy he had gun parts, right? And they're interviewing him. And the interviewer, she's like, "Hey, you sell guns?" He's like, "No, I don't." He's like, "I sell all the parts that can help you make a gun. I don't sell complete guns." So he was like, "I can show you. I can give you the blank. I'll give you the directions." It's like you had to drill these 2 holes with a drill press or a home drill to complete it. Then you put everything together. But you sell. He goes, "No, I don't. I don't sell guns. I sell the parts. You have to complete it to make it a gun. So anything that happens is on you. I can sell you everything you need, but he's like taking a liability off, off himself. He's like, no, they can come in here, they can rate it. They're not going to find one gun in here. Now they'll find the parts, but they're not going to find a gun. You understand? So all the different parts, you can do that. You can, again, a kit. Same thing as I was saying to you the other day, like Hennessy did it, Roush does it. They'll have these mechanics come in. Ruff was a big one with Porsche. They would take a Porsche, take it, and put their twist on it, whatever, put a bigger turbo on it, headers and all that type of stuff. So there's more than enough parts out there that you can actually make one right now. And you could add your own controller and something else to it to bring it up to the standards that you need. So I wouldn't be skeptical at all. There's enough parts out there right now. You could piece one together. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Exactly. But I feel the skepticism too, because, of course, I'm pitching the future of a startup company, and to be honest, like, it kind of frustrated me, the number of people that are trolling me about past company failures. And it'd be great to be honest about that right now, because it's like, there's more than one way of looking at a product that was shown and never made it to market. See, right. Some people are painting that as just a pure straight up failure and that I'm just vaporware or whatever, and I feel that, it's great. It makes sense that from the outside perspective, I never brought you something that you could buy. Okay.
Right.
But, it takes a lot. Statistically, a majority of startups fail. But
that's true.
I've thought about it from the very beginning. I knew that statistic. Like when I was 19, I was thinking about this when I first started trying to get into unicycles and stuff. And I was thinking, how am I going to deal with 9 out of 10 startup ventures failing? And I'm planning to do a startup venture. So from the very beginning, I thought, okay, this has to have some kind of a sustainability to it. Mm-hmm. If the company fails, there has to be a way for me to continue on with my life. There has to be a way for me to move forward. And so some companies failed because of me. Some companies failed because of the investor. Some companies failed because of the other team members that were involved or whatever. And, I've worked for people in their startups, and I've started my own, and I've done like sort of partnership kind of startups. Like the most, I suppose, fantastical role I've ever had is actually being an employed inventor. Like there was this toy company that hired me to be an employed inventor. And this was right around the time of the Pulse Glider. And I had intended to go back to China, work for them as an employed inventor, and do the Pulse Glider on the side. Because what I'd done is I had come to the United States. This is when I went to San Francisco, met some of the people there. And basically they saw the Pulse Glider, but at the time it was purely a prototype. Like it was designed as a one-off. There was no plans for production line when it was created. It was, we need to get this prototype done so we can show people and get the company off the ground. And that's the wrong goal. See, a lot of the people in these communities, in the unicycle communities and whatnot, they want to see this prototype from me, and they want to see that it's already existing. They want to see that it's something they can put money down and buy, and that their trusted rider that they've heard from before has used it. Mm-hmm. But there is no reality where that just suddenly materializes as the perfect product for them without a communication process happening along the way.
Right, right.
So this goes all the way back into open source, closed source, patents versus not. I have shown CAD models, which is something that I, in past years would never do on a unicycle group, because it was like, I know the manufacturers are trolling these pages all day long, and every design that I've shown in the last few days has already made it to probably every manufacturer's desk. Yeah. It's like, and there's no illusion about this in my head. I'm already expecting this. This is just the nature of how this goes. So I've planned that what I'm showing is something I'm willing to just give away with no returns whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It's like these suspension concepts I've shown and the concepts of the renders and this, that. It's like, you can see my process. I can draw a unicycle in CAD, but if you've watched this far, you'll know that it's way more than just CAD.
Right.
So CAD is my favorite medium because it allows me to organize all of the systems in one program. Like no other single program aside perhaps Excel could even cover the scope of all the systems in a unicycle. Mm-hmm. And I mean that by it's just hard to represent. How do you break it down? Electro versus mechanical. What about the firmware? Well, what about the process of tuning the finished firmware? Right. So there's
Right.
it's like how do you even so you need to make mechanical stuff, but you need to also buy mechanical stuff. That's sourcing, right? So
Yeah, dude, I get it. And I mean, the thing about business, and this, again, I'm a business owner, so I know the ups and downs. You got to crack some eggs to make an omelet. That's just the bottom line. Some businesses fail, some succeed, and there's no guarantee in any business you start up. That's just how it is. It's like I say, it's like the movie industry. You see movies,
exactly. See, I'm not frustrated with people trolling me and saying that I failed. That's not what bothers me. The problem is that they didn't open the conversation. No one asked where the money came from. Nobody asked me what my deal was with my investors. Nobody asked me if I actually sold this product or just showed a video of it.
right?
It's like the assumptions. That's the trolling. Okay.
Yeah, and it's crazy how people's minds will just kind of skew off on that. But again, like if you use the movie industry for example, they'll get these big budgeted film. Let's say they'll get $250 million to do a film. Film never even make. They'll start shooting it. They have all the footage, but it never makes it into the movie screens. It happens.
Yep. Business failed. That's the nature of what these investors signed on for. That's how it is. Some of these investors, I made a different deal with them. Some of them I'm paying them back, and some investors, they were on the other side of the table where they were screwing me. So it's like, that situation resolved itself.
Yeah,
so it's like more than one company I've either left or was kicked out and immediately failed of the startups that I've been involved with.
Right.
So it's like at least two of them happened that way, where the first one, the largest of all the startups that I did in China, was a $2 million investment it got. And this was by a Chinese who could speak very little English. The guy, and so that was a really interesting project. But the investors started doing some unethical things, and I left. I said, no, I don't like the way you're handling it. You're trying to micromanage how every dime is spent. This is not the agreement we signed. In the agreement we signed, that I and my business partner had control over the company and the finances and how the money was supposed to be spent, that he said he was going to invest, and then he was trying to control exactly how the money was being invested. And I'm like, that's not the deal we have, dude. I'm out. I left, and the company's gone. You never saw that unicycle hit the market. All the technology we developed in that company was a waste. And so it was a waste to that investor. To me personally, it was experience. I learned something.
Experience. Yeah.
And after that, I tried to do my own company, and I did it on the next deal was, the Pulse Glider. That was the next thing that I did after that. And I raised $15,000 from an investor. And we parted ways on I don't know, the company was still going, and he backed out. It was kind of a weird situation. We were actually still going, and the company backed out at the same time as being hired as an inventor for this other company in China.
That worked out.
So it was kind of a peculiar overlap of situations, and so he backed out at the same time as I picked up this other role in this other company, and then this other paid inventor role went for 5 months or something, and then he closed that company. So the company that I went to, I got paid to work there, and I never did almost nothing before he closed the company. Right. And so, but the delay caused this trickle effect with the Pulse Glider being so far from when I conceptualized it, did the market research at the beginning, to, I have a finished product. I'm back in China looking to figure out how to produce this thing. It's too late now. And so that's essentially what happened. Is by that point, I looked back at the US market and I said, A, I don't have the marketing momentum, and B, I don't have the products anymore. This product is not aligned with where the market is now. It needed to be launched sooner.
Gotcha.
So that's the way that I'm looking at it. So you've got this problem with Gotway releasing a new model every week. You have to have a reasonably competitive company and a reasonably competitive offering. And it's in my plan, I'm thinking, it's too unpredictable what Gotway and Kingsong and all these are going to do 2 years out, but I can guess about a year out. In my experience, I've been able to guess their trajectory for about a year, and then beyond that, it's too hazy. And so my thought is that I'm going to spend about the first year laying the foundation. And this unicycle company, it's going to take at least, I'd say around 2 years. And so maybe it'll be faster than that. I don't know. But around the first year will be foundations. We'll be building the basis of this technology, a few prototypes, try a few different designs, throw some stuff at the wall, see what sticks. And part of it is like there's a lot of ways you could go to change the suspension system. People have brought up ideas to me in private comments that no one's talking about. Like these things that are like, that's a suspension concept you see in the real world, but no unicycle has it. Why? And so, I don't even have time to model it recently, but as soon as my schedule frees up, you're going to see some more concepts popping up in these Facebook groups, because it's like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, whoa, okay. And it's like, nice. There'll be some serious, molding of the clay of this unicycle before we get through the concept to the testing stage. We might build one of these things and decide that the initial concept doesn't work. We need to pivot. And that's natural. That's why I built the skill set, because if we need to pivot 6 months down the line, it's not going to take me 6 months to do a CAD model. Okay. It's going to take me 3 weeks, right? To get through all of the technicalities and think it through. It's, speed is key when you're dealing with engineering pivots. And, that's something people really don't understand. It's like, yeah, I can redesign what I showed on Facebook in 3 days. Can I redesign the whole unicycle in 3 days? No. Like the underlying technicality is impossible. Like there's too much. Like just the battery. Anyways, it's like it takes several weeks to do a real CAD model and to model everything in a producible way. And so it's like what I'm showing is like conceptually, if this existed, would you even like it?
Right. Yeah. Here's a good comment here. And again, dude, I get what you're saying from a business standpoint. I totally get it. I do. And I'm running right with you. Machinery.
That is true. See, the reason I can in my renders of it, I actually show a C30 motor, the same exact motor that Gotway uses. And why would I model that into a unicycle I intend to produce? Because Gotway doesn't produce that motor. There's another company producing it, and I can find them. So, it's like, yes, Gotway outsources a lot, and this outsourcing without, a single guy that has the whole concept and is unifying the whole thing, that goes back to the segmentation problem that they have in China. So they break the problem down into too many little pieces, and they can't see what's really going wrong. So, yep, they're definitely outsourcing a lot in China. And, I will outsource some things too, but the final assembly line and the process that goes through and the suppliers I pick and the ways we vet, incoming product that we order from those suppliers, that's all really important. So don't necessarily want to customize suspension. That's a great point. If at all possible, I would like to stick with a standardized shock so that I don't have to deal with any of those complexities. It falls under the same boat as the motor. The mechanical production nuances are so extreme that I truly don't want to deal with that, right? So I agree with the suspension aspect, is that I would very much rather pick a standardized shock or do something that is so out of the box that it doesn't even resemble a shock anymore. It's like, to me, there's two ends of the spectrum. It's like I could create something that replaces the entire shock functionality. And in my head, I have this idea for a firmware parameterizable shock where I could parameterize the whole shock and firmware. So if it detects that you're on smooth terrain, then it operates one way. It detects that you've hit rough terrain, it's going to suddenly, instantly change the shock parameters based on the terrain.
And dude, and that's doable.
It is. Like, this isn't even rocket science. I'm not even inventing anything. This is standard car technology.
So doable. Even if you go back, and it's sort of going to run parallel to what you're saying. If you go back to let's just say 2007, 2008, we'll look at the Lancer, the Evo. What made that car was the darn computer that would apply the traction. One wheel would break loose, it would give traction to the other. You know what I mean? It made it so potent of putting the power down to the ground. That technology's old, but it's what I'm saying. It's doable.
Yep.
It's doable.
And it just needs to be miniaturized. I've been thinking about it, and And it's tough because you're dealing with thousands of pounds of forces, not something your average motor can withstand. So it's not like a feel, oh, just put a motor on a gearbox. I don't know if that's going to solve it, boss.
Right.
So it's like,
Cars been doing that for a long time, with the computer chips in the cars and all that type of stuff where it monitors all that crap and changing up and doing this. Yeah.
But I mean, even if it was just like in my head, the simplest possible version of this thing is like, on your average air shock, there's two tanks. You have your the upper and the lower tank. And essentially, it's the differences between these two that make the shock behavior, in addition to the tension of the spring itself. But that's not what I'm trying to control. I'm more thinking about the dampening control.
Mm-hmm.
And so the theory here is that if you could have like a few solenoids and maybe a spare auxiliary air tank, you could actually use the suspension to pump up that air tank and have the solenoid automatically, allow air to flow in and out of the auxiliary tank to the top and bottom dynamically. It's like you only need a few valves to do it, maybe two. But like the theory is that you already have the air pump. The piston is the air pump. You don't even need an auxiliary compressor.
Makes
if
sense.
you could just and then pump it up the first time.
Yeah, dude. That's funny, but it's true.
The theory is that you could open and close the valve at the exact time, and the suspension is in that exact moment that it pumps up an auxiliary tank. And so you don't even need a third-party system to power this thing. It could be self-powered and just a valve managing the pressures.
That's smart, actually. That is genius right there. Yeah.
No kidding, dude. Like, that's why I deal with finished products. A lot of my sourcing from China, I'm trying to deal with finished products. I'll probably source tires. I'll probably source like motors, but the idea is that the motor arrives, it works or it doesn't. And if I'm ordering a pallet of motors, I need to have a Chinese person testing these things in China before they come to me. So there's a process to deal with it. Small production runs in China are a absolute nightmare because the Chinese are targeted and focused on larger orders. Like your $10,000 order doesn't mean anything to them. Now that may not be true anymore because in the last 6 months, China's been struggling and their entire attitude has shifted. They are much more customer focused. They are much more like targeting, thinking about what their customers need. But I try to limit what's coming out of there because I want to see basically, stuff that the factories already are doing right and doing well. That's what I want. Like PCB production, pretty much down pat in China. Like you're going to have a hard time competing with that anywhere else. But if you're talking custom motor production, well, then they have to deal with they have to get all these different industries in line. They've got to get mechanical production in line. They've got to get electrical production in line. They've got to get, all these tolerances in line. They've got to get all these different kinds of machines working. And of course, the nuances of electric motors, one wire being wrapped wrong could screw the whole thing up.
Yep.
One strand being out of place could mess it up. I agree. Like if I could actually, sell it, I'd probably sell a non-suspension unicycle first, just because it reduces the number of difficulties to get through production by a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And there aren't any good non-suspension unicycles coming out this year. So it feels like it's kind of open, I mean, I'm not saying no good non-suspension wheels, but pretty much like they're not serious grade wheels, right? So
yeah, no, you're right. I don't even know.
The Nikola was the last of the high performance solid axle wheels that Gotway made, right? I think. And since then, they've been pretty much making suspension 16s with a T4 and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because I just picked up a T4 Pro. Got that a couple weeks ago. Pretty nice, man, for what it is. But you're right, man. And Nick was the last.
And it's ironically the first too, because it was the first 100-volt wheel to come out, and I still ride it to this day.
Dude, the Nikola, I did a video.
It's hard to beat that combination.
Dude, I did a video on a Nick AR And
That's
I
what I'm
was
on. I'm writing a
riding that
nickel AR,
rail.
basically custom built. I cut the top out of it.